Hey there guys, and welcome back to another episode of RuneScape's greatest achievements. In today's segment, we'll be taking a look at Expeditive, one of RuneScape's most decorated 10 HP accounts that has managed to exceed absolute perfection. This man has accomplished feats that were deemed impossible by the masses, and overcame achievements that I can't wait to showcase to you all today. So, without further ado, I bring to you the perfect 10 HP Ironman account, Expeditive. Expeditive began his journey back in late 2020 with the goal to create an optimal account for rushing in PvP. Although this would soon change ever so slightly, as he not only wanted to still create this particular build, he also wanted to perfect it, all while remaining 204 HP XP, or otherwise known as gaining absolute 0 hit points experience. Now, this would be achieved by a various number of old spawn manipulations as shown on screen and many other specific methods that would be required to bypass certain quest mechanics. It is also quite refreshing to actually see some of these old clips again, especially after Jagex removed melee spawn manipulation for whatever reason. I still actually don't know why. And you can still actually spawn manipulate with a projectile like using a cannon. Nevertheless, Expeditive would use these mechanics to his advantage to knock out a bunch of early game quests that would require the risk of spawn manipulation. These particular methods would also have a factor of risk, as you needed to release your interface within a 0.6 second window. And by releasing your interface too early, you could run the risk of gaining unwanted hit points experience, which would in turn ruin the account. Though as you can imagine from the title, Expeditive over here has clearly managed to complete just about everything he can possibly achieve to absolute perfection. And throughout this episode, we'll find out exactly how. As you can see, this type of account also has the utilization of dialogue manipulation. You definitely can work around it with combat, but this just makes it extremely easy. During the time, Expeditive also ran into a number of instances where you still would risk combat experience and manage to come out unscathed. And during the fight with Delorith, you must also attack the demon at least once with the Silverlight that just so happens to have an increased accuracy bonus against the demon. Nowadays, we have the use of Poison Dynamite that removes the risk altogether, which I'll later showcase on my Ultimate Ironman series. Expeditive also had to complete quite a significant amount of clue scrolls for purple suites which were essential for completing certain bosses. He also chose to open his caskets on Entrana, which removes the rolls of all combat-related items, thus receiving a higher chance for both page set completions and obviously purple suites. And during this grind, he did actually manage to complete most of his page sets in preparation for the release of Poison Dynamite in the coming future. And this is also where Expeditive's goals would finally solidify, as at the time, we were all teased with the possibility of future updates revolving around an item that could deal real damage without granting combat experience. Depending on where said item could be used was still unknown. However, he wasn't wavered in his goals for perfection, so he started knocking out everything he could before this coming update. One of these particular goals was completing Shadow of the Storm, which on surface level seems like a cakewalk, but you couldn't be further from the truth. Thankfully, following the clue scroll grind, Expeditive had amassed well over 200 purple suites, which gives you one singular chance to Tiki and recoil Agrith Nar. This boss also has a teleport mechanic that can actually stack you out, which is why overeats like Guthix Rests are completely essential. One mistake and that could be over 200 hours down the drain. Following the release of Song of the Elves, you couldn't use a cannon anymore within the caves. Though at the time you could still spawn manipulate, which was necessary for the completion of Underground Pass. This also unlocked the Crystal Bow following the completion of Regicide and Roving Elves, granting a key item for Wilderness Slayer. Expeditive is, from what I believe, one of 2 accounts with Underground Pass complete without HP XP. However, he also took the time to theorycraft and help cultivate a method for both Contact and Iclarin's Little Helper. Following the changes that were made to help support the quest Beneath Cursed Sands, you now didn't need to inflict any real damage to the Scarab. This used to be one of few quests that were just plain out of reach for many restricted accounts, but now with the use of new game mechanics, it had become possible to complete even on a skiller. though it did still require a significant amount of skill to say the least. By waiting for the aggression timer to run dry at the back of the cave, the Scarab will still target you, although his minions will spawn during his special attack unaggressive. Once 3 minions have spawned, the Scarab can't roll a special attack chance anymore, so you're free to tick eat the boss until his HP hits 0. Following the completion of Contact, Expeditive still had a few things to touch up on before the release of Dynamite that had been both playtested and announced to come out on the 6th of December 2022. The release of Dynamite was a rocky road to say the least. The accuracy wasn't calculated properly, and it also just plain didn't work in certain circumstances. Soon thereafter, by the 13th of December, Dynamite was re-evaluated by Mod Ash and was working as intended, which is what truly kicked this account into gear. Following all the reworks to Poison Dynamite, Expeditive was now finally able to complete Horror from the Deep. By death spawning a significant amount of pineapple, he could then cut them into rings to produce 4 pieces of food per inventory slot. In doing so meant that he could bring more dynamite down for a greater chance at actually pulling off damage, as for some reason it's still just so inaccurate even though it rolls off both your fire making level and your highest bonus. This would also require a reasonable amount of concentration, as if you are even 1 tick off during the entire battle, you risk the chance of having to start all over again. Before said update, Expeditive was also going for 75 Slayer in order to try and utilize the dynamite on the gargoyles for the coveted Granite Maul. The pictures I have truly don't represent the amount of effort that went into this outrageous feat. 75 Slayer would have taken such a stupid amount of time, from the making of cannonballs to dealing with PKs and even having to use body block ults for various tasks. All of this to go for one of the most overpowered weapons in the game, the Granite Maul. Unfortunately for us, Jagex agreed to some of the feedback given by the playtesters in regards to the Temple Guardian, and made it so that you can actually kill him with the poison dynamite. Back in the day, you could still do this, but you either had to gain combat experience or be naughty like me and break in the back way. Now with access into Mauritania, Expeditive could move on to the grind for the Granite Maul. To guarantee venom, the ult would need both a Serp Helm and a Staff or Trident of the Swamp. You'd then airstrike and hope to hit a 1. This would give the gargoyle time to reheal to full before the venom tick runs down. However, in this circumstance, you need to inflict damage between the reheal to full and the venom tick in order to grant you the kill credit, which adds a lot more room for error and makes the grind significantly longer. Also, a little tidbit about gargoyles in general, they were the first NPC in the game that had been intentionally altered by Jagex to stop spawn manipulation before the global removal. And to add to that, nothing was ever mentioned about this, it was just straight up removed and never spoken of again. At this stage, there are no other words to describe this account other than absolute perfection. But what's next to come are an accumulation of some of the most impressive utilizations of game mechanics that I have ever seen. You could say this build is realistically already complete, although Expeditive not only wanted to give over 110%, he wanted to blow everyone out of the water. Alright. It's time to all fasten your seatbelts because this is where it gets extremely mechanical. I'll try to explain it exactly how it's intended, although it still may get pretty confusing. What I'll showcase here is the process of smuggling a cannon into Recruitment Drive for the combat segment of the quest to ensure 0 hit points experience. Firstly, as you can see, Expeditive has gotten himself pre-poisoned from a cave crawler and quickly teleported to both Banker's items and get into the Recruitment Drive cutscene. Once inside, the poison tick timer has frozen, although he's still technically poisoned nonetheless. From here, he's going to run through till he gets to Sir Lay. Now, all he needs to do is pick up 4 weapons on the table in order to spawn a gravestone. And he's going to do this by relogging and then sitting under the login screen. This will act exactly the same as any other high priority queue, such as a quest log or any on-screen interface. This will reset the poison timer within the void, taking down underneath a high priority queue which will proc the poison as it's the first thing queued behind the login screen. I do apologise for all the technical jargon, but this really is only half of said jargon. By then death spawning again with the necessary items for the boss fight, you can now collect your items from the original gravestone within the recruitment drive cutscene. Following the completion of some profound quests for his particular build, Expeditive and his friend Lavalure cultivated a number of methods and lures for the wilderness bosses before the impending rework of the wilderness. This would involve the use of both a lure of the Callisto and many retribution ults. And because Expeditive is an Ironman, he can freely kill the retri accounts in multi to inflict damage on the Callisto without gaining any combat experience. And as you can see on screen below, they also figured out a similar method and lure on Vedion. Expeditive also managed over 500 KC at the Chaos Elemental, receiving the pet at 500 KC on the dot. Following a few hundred hours in the wilderness, our crazy friend over here decided it would be a good idea to theorycraft for some of the final quests even feasibly possible. By forcing a 1-to-1 boulder attack through the use of an impressive lure, Expeditive could slowly chip away at Rock's health with both the cannon, recoils, and Guthix restores to overheal. And once he was out of recoils, he could then fire the cannon and flinch the bird around the umbrella, just out of range from the boulders. The following and final two achievements of this video have to be some of the most well thought out and impressive uses of both game mechanics and intellect all wrapped up into one. I would suggest to go and check out Expeditive's channel after this video to take a look at some of the more in-depth versions of some of these quests and boss fights that you've seen here today. To jam-pack all this material into one single video is a simple injustice to say the least. But I feel like if I explain anything more in depth like Recruitment Drive, we'll be here for far too long. This boss is both immune to poison and recoils, so the workaround for this one is absolutely insane. As you can see on screen, the NPC's attack speed when inflicted with poison in an unorthodox manner is reduced significantly. Trading 1-for-1 blows just won't work with the supplies at hand, so both sitting in safe spots while wind striking to force the NPC to shift and using an animation stall to force a card attack is the way to go. Now with the attack speed reduced and all the safe spots accounted for, Expeditive can move between locations while getting 4 attacks off on each rotation depending on the spawn. For the final segment of today's video, I'm stoked to be able to share with you all today Mage Arena 2 on absolute steroids. I thought I'd save the most perplexing achievement for last, because this one is truly within another realm. Fortunately, with the introduction of Poison Dynamite, all 3 Mage Arena bosses have no immunity towards the damage, which means you can actually gain the kill credit. By the use of an animation stall after a specific lure against Justicar, you can stack up quite a number of hits behind many different stalls. Attacking with melee will allow for a single tick of clearance to start up your animation stall. In this case, the Cooking Cape will stack up on average 7 to 8 hits of recoil damage. And because Expeditive is sitting at full HP being only 10, Justicar will roll a max hit pretty much every single time, dealing 2 damage with most recoil hits. By using the Wilderness Crab teleport, Expeditive was able to return in under 2 minutes, making sure that Justicar wouldn't despawn, which we'll see a lot more of in the following 2 NPCs. Moving on to Parazda, or rather we'll just call him the Zami boss to make it easy. After death spawning a bunch of food for overheals and having the ult body block Zami from behind, Expeditive can run west and de-aggro to start with the Poison Dynamite. And fortunately with the fizz animation, he actually has time to get back to the safe zone before the dynamite blows. The animation stall method can also be used on this guy as well, although the length of the time it takes to actually get back here makes it worth it to death spawn over the stall. And finally we have Derwin, which is just plain absolutely ballistic. The first two, yeah, they're reasonable. They take a little bit of time and concentration through tick eating and a bunch of animation stalls, but they have absolutely nothing on this one. In the entire heat map, there is only one single spawn that makes this method possible. And to put this into perspective, it took Expeditive over 200 hours to both receive the spawn and have the time to complete what comes next. Okay, so the green lines represent the power sphere activation distance, the yellow lines represent Derwin's natural wander distance, and the purple lines represent the aggression zone. Stepping out of the aggression zone will force Derwin to walk back to his natural wander zone, which is far enough out of the way for the orbs to activate. Expeditive will then run to one of his other death spawns to continue flinching with recoils, rinse, and repeat. Not to mention you also need to remain in combat with this guy just like the other bosses, otherwise he'll despawn after 2 minutes. Expeditive also utilised what I call a reverse tick eat to have Derwin roll a 10 with a projectile while overhealing, dealing 2 damage with a recoil. And with over 4 hours of tick eating and forced movements to avoid his special attack, Expeditive completed what was thought to be completely impossible, a 10 HP, 0 XP Mage Arena 2 cape. With that said, Expeditive is certainly up there with some of the most mechanically skilled individuals and has one of the most impressive accounts I've covered to date. Again, if you want to check out his channel, I urge you to do so, and I'll leave the link in the description. Expeditive has also sent me a few of his future goals for the build, which I reckon I'll keep a secret for the possibility of a future upload. And if you guys would like to see more of these videos in the future, drop some names in the comment section below that you think should be eligible for a showcase. I'd really love to see some of the more talent that we have out there. One last thing to note before the end of the video, I've just released the new membership subscriptions on this channel. So if you want to help towards another Rendy x Mauler America tour, make sure to drop a subscription and maybe even become a member while doing so if you really want to support us. I hope you all enjoyed today's video, and as always, have a lovely day.